Welcome to the deep dive. You've sent us some really interesting stuff about how companies try, or, well, maybe don't try to truly get what their customers are about.
Yeah, and that's perfect timing because today we're jumping right into that with something called market orientation.
Exactly. So think of this as our mission today. Figure out what market orientation actually looks like on the ground. How do businesses really do it?
And, why does it matter? Or maybe, when doesn't it matter so much? We'll be using the research you shared as our guide.
Okay, so foundation first. We hear a lot about the marketing concept, right? This idea of putting the customer at the center.
Right.
But what we're really digging into today is market orientation. That's the action part.
Uh-huh. It's the implementation, not
Yeah.
just the philosophy, but the actual everyday things a company does.
It's the difference between saying you care and, well, actually showing it through what you do.
And what's kind of surprising, even though customer focus seems like marketing 101, there's actually not a ton of deep research on the how, the real nitty-gritty.
Really. Seems fundamental.
It does. That's why the sources you sent are so great. The researchers looked at existing literature, sure, but then they actually went out and talked to, what, like 62 managers?
Mm.
And academics, too.
Yeah, about 10 academics. Trying to get that real world perspective.
Exactly, to fill in those gaps in understanding.
Okay, let's get into the core definition then. The textbooks, they often talk about it like integrating marketing with everything else for long-term profit, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or maybe focusing on the customer, making a profit, and having marketing sort of
Yeah.
communicate it all. Those are the standard definitions you might find.
But the managers in the study had a slightly different take, didn't they?
They did, and this is where it gets interesting. The literature points to three pillars: customer focus, coordinated marketing across departments, and profitability.
Okay.
Now, the managers, they were totally on board with customer focus and coordination.
Yeah.
Absolutely central, they said.
But profitability.
Profitability was different. Overwhelmingly, they saw profit not as a component of being market-oriented, but as the result of it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's like that analogy. Eating isn't the goal of life, it's what you do to live.
Exactly. Profit is what sustains the business, hopefully, because you're doing a good job understanding and serving customers.
So based on that real-world input, we get a more grounded definition.
Right, a field-based definition. Market orientation is the organization-wide generation of market intelligence, the dissemination of that intelligence across departments, and the responsiveness to it.
Organization-wide, that sounds key.
It is. And it's about intelligence on current and future customer needs, plus all the factors affecting those needs. Let's break down those three bits: generation, dissemination, responsiveness.
Okay, first up. Intelligence generation. This isn't just sending out a survey, is it?
Not at all. It's much broader. It's actively gathering information about, well, everything that impacts customers.
Like what?
Competitors, definitely. Changes in regulations, technology shifts, even understanding your customer's own industries. It's that 360 view.
And you mentioned future needs.
Yes, that's critical. Thinking ahead, one senior VP in the research talked about planning services years before customers might even realize they need them.
Wow, okay. Because building that capability takes time.
Exactly. You can't just flip a switch. And another layer here is defining the customer. It can be tricky.
How so?
Well, think about selling consumer goods. Is the customer the end user eating the chips, or the supermarket deciding whether to stock them?
Right, could be both. Or different ones matter for different decisions.
Precisely. Or in healthcare, the patient receiving care often isn't the entity paying the bill, so you have multiple customers to understand.
So it's complex. And how do companies gather all this intel? Not just surveys, you said.
All right, formal market research plays a role, sure, but also informal chats with suppliers or distributors, analyzing sales reports, digging deep into customer complaints or databases, checking out competitor products.
And a really crucial point from the research. This isn't just marketing's job.
Absolutely not. That came through loud and clear. You might have R&D folks picking up insights at conferences, senior execs spotting trends in journals.
There was that cool example, too, about the manufacturing company.
Oh, yeah, where the production line workers actually hand-delivered invitations to customers for an open house.
That's amazing, connecting the makers with the users.
Exactly. It's about weaving this market understanding throughout the entire organization.
Okay, so step one is generating all this broad intelligence. Step two is intelligence dissemination, getting the word out internally.
Yeah, because it's no good if only one department knows what's going on. R&D needs the info to design relevant products.
Manufacturing needs to know potential demand.
Finance needs to understand the resource implications. It has to flow.
How does that happen effectively?
Well, there are formal ways, like newsletters sharing key findings, reports, presentations.
But also the informal stuff.
Hugely important. Just hall talk. People sharing stories or observations across departments. Remember that VP who kept a database on customers, including like their pets' names?
Yeah. Sounds a bit much, but it shows a dedication to sharing that deep understanding.
It does. It's about fostering that horizontal communication, making sure information moves sideways, not just up and down the hierarchy.
Got it. So generate the intelligence, spread it around. And the third piece is responsiveness.
This is the action part, taking all that generated and disseminated intelligence and actually doing something with it.
Okay, like what kind of actions?
It could be selecting which target markets to focus on, designing or modifying products and services,
Yeah.
deciding how to produce things, how to distribute them, how to promote them.
So basically all the core business activities.
Pretty much. It touches almost every department. It's the coordinated organizational reaction to the market intelligence.
So market orientation isn't just on or off, it's more of a scale.
Exactly. It exists on a continuum. A
Hmm.
company can be more or less market-oriented.
And it's best viewed at the level of a specific business unit, right? Not the whole giant corporation necessarily.
That's the most useful level of analysis, yeah.
Yeah.
Different parts of a large company can vary significantly.
Okay, that gives us a really solid picture of what market orientation is. Now, the research also looks at why some companies are more market-oriented than others, the influencing factors or antecedents.
Right. What helps or hinders a company in developing this focus? And the first big category is senior management.
The folks at the top, sounds like they cast a long shadow.
Oh, absolutely. Their influence came up again and again in the interviews. Things like the top boss personally handling a small customer complaint.
This is a message.
A huge message. Or managers saying their approach basically reflects the leader's mindset. The research really emphasizes that top management has to champion this.
It's that tone at the top idea, leading by example.
It is. But there's also a warning here about the communication action gap. Leaders might say customer focus is critical, but then their actions may be cutting market research budgets or punishing experiments that don't pay off immediately, send a different signal.
Mixed messages. That creates confusion down the line, right?
Totally. If junior managers get conflicting signals, they don't know what's really valued. The research proposes that a bigger gap between words and actions up top leads to more ambiguity and ultimately a weaker market orientation. We can call that proposition P1A and P1B, essentially.
Makes sense. Another senior management factor mentioned is risk aversion.
Yeah, how willing are leaders to take chances? Because responding to the market often means innovating, trying new things, and that inherently involves risk.
You can't innovate without some risk.
Right. And some executives in the study argued strongly against being too cautious. One said you have to take risk to survive. Another said not being market-oriented is the biggest risk because you become obsolete.
So if leaders are too afraid of failure,
Then employees won't stick their necks out. They won't propose those potentially risky but customer-focused initiatives. So, the research suggests, Proposition P2, that higher risk aversion at the top dampens market orientation.
okay. What about the manager's backgrounds, like education or career path?
There's a suggestion, drawing on other research, that maybe managers with more formal education or who've moved up through different roles might foster a stronger market orientation. Proposition P3, let's say.
Interesting. Why?
The thinking is they might be more open to new ideas, different perspectives, more adaptable maybe. Linked to that is Proposition P4, the importance of senior managers having a positive attitude towards change in general.
If you embrace change, you're more likely to embrace adapting to the market.
Exactly. Market orientation is about adapting to change. So leaders who are comfortable with that, who see it as necessary, are more likely to build that culture.
And one last senior management point of knowledge, the ability of the top marketing executive to build bridges.
Yeah, building trust with peers in other functions like R&D or operations. Proposition P5 suggests that if the head of marketing is trusted by other leaders, it reduces that interdepartmental friction we'll talk about next, making collaboration easier.
Okay, so that covers the leaders. The next set of factors is interdepartmental dynamics, how the teams work together or don't.
And the first big one here is conflict. Friction between departments.
That sounds like a killer for coordination.
It really can be. Different departments naturally have different goals sometimes. Manufacturing wants efficiency, marketing might want customization.
Which can cost more.
Right. So that conflict can block communication and stop coordinated responses to customer needs. Proposition P6 basically says more conflict equals less market orientation.
Makes sense. What's the opposite of conflict?
Well, interdepartmental connectedness. How much people in different departments actually interact, formally and informally.
Like water cooler chat, but also structured meetings?
Exactly. Companies that encourage that cross-departmental communication tend to be more market-focused. That executive example of deliberately breaking down silos fits here. So Proposition P7, greater connectedness leads to stronger market orientation.
And it's not just talking, but also listening.
Precisely. Proposition P8 touches on concern for others' ideas. Are people genuinely open to suggestions from colleagues and other teams? Or is there a not invented here attitude?
If you don't respect other teams' input, you won't get that shared understanding.
Exactly. You build walls instead of bridges.
Okay, so you've got leadership and team interactions. The third bucket is organizational systems, the underlying structures and processes.
Right. This is about things like departmentalization, how rigidly siloed teams are, formalization, how many strict rules and procedures there are, and centralization, how much decision-making power is concentrated at the top.
How do these affect market orientation? It sounds complicated.
It is a bit of a balancing act, according to the research. Very rigid structures, lots of bureaucracy, and top-down decisions might make it harder to generate intelligence, share it widely, and design flexible responses. That's Proposition P9A. But Proposition P9B suggests that some level of formalization might actually help in efficiently implementing the chosen response once a decision is made. You need some process to get things done.
Okay, so structure can hinder the what and why, but help the how.
Sort of. And centralization, P9C, might specifically hinder the design of the response, but could speed up its implementation if the top decides quickly. It's nuanced.
Definitely. What about rewards? How people are measured and paid?
Crucial factor. This is Proposition P10. If reward systems are heavily based on short-term financial metrics, only quarterly profits, say managers will focus on hitting those numbers.
Even if it means sacrificing longer-term customer relationships.
Potentially, yes. A marketing manager in the study worried about exactly that. So aligning rewards with market-oriented goals, customer satisfaction, retention, long-term market health, is seen as critical for fostering that orientation.
You get what you measure and reward. Makes sense. And the last system factor, internal politics.
Yeah, Proposition P11 suggests that a culture where there's a lot of political maneuvering, people pursuing their own agendas, tends to increase that interdepartmental conflict we talked about earlier.
Which then hurts market orientation. It's all connected.
It really is. These internal factors, leadership, team dynamics, systems, all interplay to shape how customer-focused a company could be.
The research also briefly mentions links within market orientation itself, right? Like how the intelligence is perceived.
Just quickly, yes. Propositions P12A through D suggest that intelligence is more likely to be disseminated and acted upon if the source is seen as credible and trustworthy, if the information doesn't radically challenge the status quo, or if it's politically acceptable. Practical realities.
Okay, so we know what it is and what influences it internally. Let's shift to the consequences. What happens when a company is more market-oriented? What are the payoffs?
Well, one perhaps less obvious benefit that emerged from the interviews was improved strategic focus and vision.
How so?
A sales manager mentioned it, leading to a more cohesive product focus, clearer direction. It provides that central organizing principle, understanding and serving the market, that helps align everything the company does.
A unifying theme. And the more obvious one, better business performance.
That's the big one, Proposition P13. The research strongly suggests, and other studies support, that greater market orientation generally leads to better results. ROI, profits, market share, sales growth.
The bottom line improves. But it's not just about money, right? What about the employees?
Good point. This was highlighted as maybe needing more study, but executives definitely saw positive effects on employees. Proposition P14 covers this.
Like what?
Better morale. They used the phrase esprit de corps, higher job satisfaction, stronger commitment to the organization.
When people feel they're part of something meaningful, serving customers well.
Exactly. It fosters teamwork and a sense of shared purpose.
And naturally, you'd expect positive effects on customers, too.
Absolutely. Proposition P15 suggests a clear link between market orientation and things like higher customer satisfaction and more repeat business. Loyalty.
Makes intuitive sense. If you focus on them, they react positively.
Generally, yes. Executives mention things like increased loyalty and positive word of mouth.
Though, wasn't there a slight caveat about innovation?
Ah, yes. Important nuance. The research cites one study that found mixed results regarding the impact on developing truly new breakthrough products.
So being market-focused helps with incremental improvements, maybe, but not necessarily radical innovation.
It's an area needing more research, but it's a good reminder that the link might not be universally positive for all outcomes. Sometimes innovation comes from R&D pushing boundaries, not just customer feedback.
Okay, so significant potential benefits, but maybe some nuances. The final piece the research tackles is environmental moderators. When does market orientation matter more or less?
Exactly. The external context. First up is market turbulence, Proposition P16.
Meaning how much customer preferences are changing.
Right. The more the market is shifting new tastes, changing needs like those food companies dealing with demographic shifts, the stronger the link between market orientation and performance. You need to be tuned in when things are volatile.
Makes sense. If the market's stable, maybe it's less critical. What about technology?
Technological turbulence, Proposition P17. Here, the research suggests the opposite effect.
Really? How?
In industries with very rapid technological change, the link between market orientation and performance might actually be weaker,
Why?
because success might depend more on staying ahead of the tech curve, on R&D breakthroughs, rather than just responding to current customer needs, which might lag behind the technology potential.
Interesting. So tech leadership can sometimes trump customer feedback in fast-moving fields. What about competition?
Proposition P18. This one's more intuitive. The greater the competition, the stronger the link.
If customers have lots of choices, you better understand them well.
Precisely. If you're a monopoly, you can probably get away with being less customer-focused, sadly. But in a competitive market, it's vital for survival and success.
And the last moderator, the general economy.
Yeah, Proposition P19. The suggestion here is that in a weaker economy, the link between market orientation and performance gets stronger.
Why would that be?
Because when times are tough, customers become more value conscious. They scrutinize purchases more carefully.
So companies need to be even more attuned to delivering exactly what customers need and value.
Exactly. Even though, paradoxically, resources for marketing might be tighter precisely when that focus is most needed.
So these external factors, market shifts, tech pace, competition, economy, really shape how impactful market orientation is.
They do. The research groups them into supply-side factors like tech and competition, and demand-side like customer preferences and the economy. It's a helpful way to think about it.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. From defining market orientation to what drives it, its consequences, and when it matters most. What's the main takeaway here?
I think the biggest thing is realizing market orientation is way more than just, being nice to customers.
Yeah.
It's this deep, ongoing process.
Right. It's about generating that broad market intelligence.
Sharing it across the whole company.
And then actually acting on it in a coordinated way.
Exactly. It's systemic.
And crucially, it's not a magic bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Its effectiveness really depends on the company's internal situation and the external environment.
Absolutely. What's critical for one business in one market might be less so for another. It's context dependent.
So for everyone listening, maybe the prompt is to think about your own context. How is market intelligence really being generated and shared where you are?
Yeah, and what signals are being sent? What behaviors are actually rewarded? Is there a genuine organization-wide responsiveness?
And maybe a final thought to chew on. Given all this complexity, is it possible for a company to, say, over-invest in generating intelligence but fail on the dissemination or responsiveness?
Ooh, that's interesting. Like having tons of data but not sharing it effectively, or not having the systems or culture to act on it.
Yeah. Or maybe focusing too much on current needs from intelligence gathering and missing the signals about the future. What are the hidden costs of that kind of imbalance?
That's a great question. Definitely something to ponder. There could be real consequences to getting that balance wrong.
Well, this has been fascinating. Thanks for unpacking all that.
My pleasure. And thanks to everyone for tuning into this deep dive. We'd love to hear your thoughts or any aha moments this sparked.